What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Boozer here. Thanks for stopping by. Happy weekend, by the way. Hopefully you guys are having a good one here today. In this video, we're going to be trying to kind of redefine or actually rethink what the different stages of the game are. Now, what I mean by this is the common terms that people use to describe players' progress in this game, such as early game, mid game, late game, and end game. Now, the reason why I kind of had this idea come to mind was mainly because we are going to be having a big content release, the Grim Forest, coming in, probably pretty soon. A lot of teasers been happening, so this idea came to mind. So I think every time new content comes into the game, we kind of need to redefine some of these terms a little bit. Obviously, with more content, it just means more things to do, and that means each kind of stage of progression for everybody gets a little bit longer. But anyways, I thought this would be a nice, fun discussion, conversational piece. So let me know in the comments below what you guys think and where you guys are in this game in terms of overall progress. Give me your thoughts right now, and then after watching the video, give me your thoughts at the end if what I said actually changes your opinion on what stage of the game you are actually in. And just for fun, I actually did a poll on this exact topic almost 2 years ago today. So it's going to be interesting to kind of look back on this. I don't know if some of you guys maybe remember this poll, but I'm going to put it back up on the screen right now. And this is what I asked you guys. What stage of the game do you guys consider yourselves in? Only 14% of you guys said you guys are end game, 27% said late game, 38% said mid game, 20% said early game. Now, we didn't properly define what each of these stages actually means. And like I said, this was almost 2 years ago. So what I used was basically just mission benchmarks and mission achievements to kind of signify what actually is, part of each stage. But I think that this is a very blanket general way of saying, oh, if you're working on Arbiter, you're technically a early game player. I don't think that's a good way of measuring it, so I'm going to try a different approach in this video. But I thought this stat was kind of interesting, so I just wanted to share it with you guys here today, and maybe I'll redo this poll in the future. So all right, let's start off. So let's first talk about the early game and how I'm going to define each stage. I think using progress in the game, progress in the content of the game makes the most sense. Not necessarily achievements or completion of the game, missions, or getting the mission characters or anything like that. I don't think that's a great measurement. So I think progress in the game makes the most sense. So that's kind of how I'm going to start off with each stage. So first we're going to talk about the early game stage. So in the early game, you're basically looking to 6-star your first champion or your first squad of champion. You're still in the early game if you're still working on that. The big thing about 6-starring champions, obviously you get a big power boost from the masteries that you can acquire, tier 6 masteries and all that. You get more stats, you get more slots for gear, the banner slot of course, and it makes a big difference. So in the early game, you're looking at 6-starring your first champion, first team of champions. You're also looking to kind of complete Brutal, at least get Brutal campaign on farm, finishing off Brutal. Now, Nightmare campaign, I feel like it's not necessarily a good marker of anything. You can definitely save Nightmare campaign for the future when you want to finish it. It's not important to finish Nightmare campaign because you don't really need to do anything in Nightmare campaign. You do get a Sacred Shard at the end, which is nice, of course. And of course, it's something to progress in, but it's not necessary to complete. But that's probably going to be part of the early game. Anyways, after that, we're going to be working on Demon Lord Clan Boss. So Demon Lord Clan Boss, you're basically completing everything up to, I would say, Brutal. I think is very standard for early game accounts. Once you have 5-6-star champions with masteries, War Master and things, and poison, you don't need great gear. You can clear Brutal, top chest Brutal Clan Boss without too much issue. So I would still consider this very, very early game. If your progress is kind of stagnated and you are not able to clear Brutal, it's probably something that happened along the line. Maybe you chose the wrong champion. Maybe you're not using your energy efficiently. Maybe you're not prioritizing what you need to prioritize properly. But in the early game, you should be able to clear top chest Brutal without too much difficulty with 5-6-star champions and their masteries. Now, in order to clear Brutal Clan Boss, you need to progress a little bit in the dungeons. The big thing here is in the early game, you should be working towards a 6-star gear. It's very important to work towards 6-star gear. You don't want to commit energy towards 4-star, 5-star gear levels. So for example, Dragon is the easiest in normal difficulty usually because it just has the most flexibility in terms of team compositions. You really want to be hitting at least stage 13. You get this chance at the 6-star. But honestly, the best spot is you want to hit at least stage 20, which guarantees you the 5-star and 6-star. So I would say this is still early game. I would say Dragon would be the first dungeon that you still hit all the way up to 20. But I would categorize anything between 16 and 20 to still be early game, because some of the dungeons are a little bit more specific in what you actually need. For example, Spider. For example, Fire Knight. Ice Golem can also be kind of tricky as well, but Dragon is the most flexible. So I would expect you to be at least 16 to 20 in terms of Dragon dungeon progress. After that, you should be progressing at least a little bit in Arena. Arena is one of those areas where you should have a proper team composition to go through Arena, and you should be trying to make your way into gold. So even in the early stages of the game, you should be prioritizing Arena, because you got to work on your Great Hall. It takes a long time. And if you neglect it, it's just something you cannot accelerate in the future. It's just something you just have to do every day. So work towards gold, and I think you're still in the early game. But once you kind of get better gear and all that, it's going to be easier for you to get into gold and then stay into gold. So with all that said, I still consider all this stuff to be very, very early stages of the game. All right, so let's move on to the mid game. So this is kind of what I consider to be the mid game. You're looking to be farming or at least completing most of the dungeons up to 25. So if you guys don't know what the dungeons after 20 look like, at 21 to 25, some of the changes happen in the dungeon. So for example, max HP gets reduced or capped at level 21 to 25 and beyond. It's just something that Plarium did. Plarium initially had the stages up to 20 only, and then they implemented 21 to 25, and then eventually hard difficulty. But it just feels like a different encounter. But if you're sitting in the mid game, you should be working towards 25, maybe even completing 25 and heading into hard difficulty. Again, Dragon would probably be the most easiest, I'd say, for most people, again, with compositions that are just easier to put together with less specific champions for you to need. And if you have the new Xenomorph free login, then this Dragon would be way, way easier. Up next, so clan boss progression. This is very important basically for everybody. But once you hit clan boss and then you get up to this level where you can hit Nightmare difficulty and Ultra Nightmare difficulty, that's the key. Ultra Nightmare difficulty is the key. Once you hit here and you can get this top chest, you have access to sacred shards and you have access to legendary books. So clan boss, anybody will tell you that this is the most important content in the game that you must get done as early as possible. The earlier you get it, the quicker you can start doing other stuff a lot easier, mainly participating in events such as fusions, and obviously just expanding your account with shards and then building out champions with books. So this is very, very important. This is kind of where you need to focus on once you start hitting the mid game. Once you start getting your dungeons on farm, once you start getting better champions, once your champions start getting better gear, start working towards finding a team that can actually top chest Ultra Nightmare Clan Boss to get that big chest. Not one key, top chest. So even if you have to spend 4 keys to get that top chest, that's great. Find a clan that can clear Ultra Nightmare, get the double chest every day, and you're looking way, way, way good. All right, but honestly, Ultra Nightmare Clan Boss at this stage in the game, it's probably considered mid-game content. It's no longer, late game content, to be honest. It's very standard content that you must achieve very quickly just to boost up your account. Now, the next thing that's really difficult that most people will not be able to get into in the early game is actually Hydra. So starting Hydra is actually very difficult because Hydra, it does require some specific champions for you to have a better time in Hydra. But if you have, a bunch of 6-star champions, you can kind of throw them together against Hydra and then try to achieve some of these chests. Once you get these chests, you're going to pick up some of the fragments for Mithrala. And Mithrala is a top tier champion, especially if you get her really early, which is possible if you start grinding some of these chests. So I highly recommend in the mid game, once you start getting some gear, once you get some 6-star champions, throw whatever you have at the Hydra. Put a little bit of effort into it to try to get some of the higher chests, get those Mithrala fragments, and start building her up. Now, same can be said about Chimera. Chimera is even more specific content than Hydra, so you might not be able to progress in Chimera, but definitely just do the best you can. No stress about that. After that, you should be expected to do basically Gold 4, Gold 5 arena now. Gold 5 is definitely not difficult, especially if you just cherry pick some of your teams. For example, I'm really high up in Gold 5. This is just my standard, place. And then you still see teams like this where you fight one champion and then you just pick those off. But as long as you can kind of keep your placement in Gold 4, Gold 5, you can pick up some gold bars, gold, and then all the medals and stuff to start building up your Great Hall quickly and efficiently. So that's going to be in the mid game. After that, you're looking at Doom Tower. Doom Tower is a great place to just farm up resources. And one of the key resources is going to be the lethal gear. This is not going to be easy for you guys to farm initially, especially since you guys might not have the great gear or, or required gear to handle like top levels of Dark Fae, but you guys should be able to do at least normal difficulty, or at least get through it with some difficulty, but guys should be able to get through it in the mid game. Once you guys start farming dungeon 20, start getting 6-star gear from dungeon 20 and beyond, this level of content is definitely way more manageable. Doom Tower normal, and then you guys should be working on Doom Tower hard. Maybe not completing it, but definitely working on it and working towards some of the bosses. Some of the bosses are a little bit more difficult. For example, Bommel still can give people a lot of difficulty if your gear is not great or if you don't have specific champions. And similar to like Dark Fae, for example, can be difficult if you're just not used to what team comps work. So definitely put some effort into the hard Doom Tower and normal Doom Tower in the mid game so that you guys can pick up some of these rewards for free. There is 2 Sacred Shards in this hard Doom Tower. It's obviously way more difficult, but 2 Sacred Shards there every month looks pretty good. Lastly, for the mid game, I think the Faction Wars progress, you must not neglect normal Faction Wars. Trying to finish normal Faction Wars, you start building up the glyphs. You need the glyphs for the missions eventually. So just build up the glyphs. Obviously, glyphs help a lot with, lots of content, boost your stats. And then picking up Lydia. Lydia is a great champion, and she's still relevant today after so many years. So great champion to add to any roster. But like I said, getting the materials for crafting from Perception, for example, and getting the glyphs, very, very important. They're just additional resources that you don't need to spend energy on. So those are really good just to keep on top of it, especially when your roster starts building, starts getting bigger, and then you start building more champions. And this is kind of where the mid game comes in. You start finding more champions, building more teams, and then you start pushing content wherever you can, right? Once you start getting those specific champions, start pushing content, and then you guys will see more progress come through. All right, let's move on to the late game. So this is what I consider the late game here. So obviously your dungeons are more progressed now. You're into hard mode difficulty. Now I'm not going to say hard mode 10 because I think there's some people that can do hard mode 10 on basically all the dungeons or top level of all the dungeons. Except for maybe like 1, maybe like 2, maybe they're missing a specific champion. So for example, Fire Knight Hard 10, I think is much harder than Dragon Hard 10, for example, right? Or even Ice Golem Hard 10 is actually quite difficult to get on a consistent farm. But I would say that you would have made significant progress in the hard dungeons. For example, Dragon Hard 10. We'll say Dragon Hard 10 is definitely possible for a late game player. At this point, you're probably looking at 1 key damage for Ultra Nightmare. It shouldn't be too difficult nowadays with blessings and all that, blessings, relics, and these super strong champions, mythicals, and all that. So shouldn't be too difficult. In terms of Hydra progress, we are probably talking 1 key progress up to about Hydra brutal difficulty, and then of course normal hard mode you can actually handle with 1 key, probably touching maybe Nightmare, maybe not quite 1 key, but I would say definitely significant progress in Hydra to the point where you can probably 1 key all the difficulties. It really depends on your kind of gear commitment, your roster commitment, and your time commitment. But in the late game, you should be able to tackle this content. Chimera is something else that's also very restrictive, but I would expect most people to be at least in the middle of Chimera if they put in some decent effort into this during the late game. After that, we should be comfortably in Silver Tag Team, potentially heading towards Gold Tag Team. This is actually something that is quite difficult for a lot of players because Tag Team is just it's not super engaging until you have a really big roster. And then it's kind of fun just to like mix and match a little bit. But in the late game, you should be in the upper edges of silver difficulty and then probably hitting into gold, not necessarily in gold. I wouldn't expect everybody to be in gold, but at least in silver. You're definitely not in bronze in late game. So that's going to be my kind of progress marker here for a late game player. Gold 5, that should just be standard. At this point, gold 5 is just easy farming. After that, Faction Wars, 21 complete. I'm not going to say Lydia complete because a lot of people, maybe they're not done Lydia, but I'm going to say at least Faction Wars 21 on most of them, most of the banners, most of the factions to be completed. I'm not going to say Lydia complete, but at least 21 on a couple of these banners working towards Lydia. Maybe you're done Lydia, that's great. I would consider that probably still late game. Late game, Doom Tower, all done. Normal difficulty cleared for sure. Normal difficulty cleared. Hard difficulty cleared. For the most part, maybe you're missing one rotation. Maybe one boss gives you trouble. Maybe you have to manual some stuff. That's fine. But basically, significant progress in hard. Doom Tower should be on full farm, so that you can pick up the rewards every month. And then Centranos. Centranos would be the big one here because Centranos is very restrictive. They're basically all secret rooms at this point. But you should be making some progress into hard difficulty during the late game because your roster should be large enough. But of course, whenever you have a roster that's capable to clear a stage, definitely do Centranos. It's just free resources, right? But I'm not going to say that you full cleared hard difficulty when you're in the late game. I'm going to reserve that for the end game. So in the end game, this is my benchmark for the end game player here. All dungeons are finished. All dungeons are finished, and you're optimizing, basically optimizing for dungeon speed. So everything's done, all dungeons, Iron Twin, Sand Devil, Phantom, Shogun, and then you're just looking for the best teams possible, whether they're food farming teams, whether they're speed teams, whether they're turn attack teams. You're just looking for the best options at that point. After that, obviously, 1 key Ultra Nightmare Clan boss. You're probably looking to cap it out, 2.14 billion damage. I don't know. You're just probably messing around with whatever you got. Throw 5 champions in, and then you guys can 1 key. That's like the end game level. All Hydra keys are optimized. So you basically have top damage, Hydra keys. Whether it's full auto, whether it's full manual, you are looking to optimize your Hydra keys. Chimera keys. Chimera is going to be fully done at this point. You're looking for either maximum damage or you're looking for maximum trials. So you're optimizing your Chimera keys in the end game. Hard Faction Wars progress. Now I'm going to say Hard Faction Wars is going to be, I'm not going to say complete Hard Faction Wars because I don't think everyone can complete this. And a lot of it is roster dependent. A lot of it could be time dependent too, because this is not auto friendly, a lot of it, unless you have an insane roster. But even for me, like, I can't full auto most of these, but I've reached 21 on most of them, finished the banners, but I haven't like 3-starred everything. So I'm not too pressed to get Polara, for example. But I'll probably say like significant progress in Hard Faction Wars. And if you had the time or maybe some more champions, you could clear Hard Faction Wars here in the end game. After that, we have Centranos, hard mode. I would say Centranos at this point, especially with the bonuses that you can acquire from live arena medals and all that. So for example, live arena area bonuses, you can max out your Centranos medals, get more stats. I would say at this point, we're probably looking at full clears for Curse City on basically like most rotations, I would say. Definitely completing, I would say 90% of Curse City on Centranos should be full auto for most endgame accounts, and then a handful of levels that might require some manual play. I would say after this amount of time, you probably have Carnage, you're probably working on his souls. Of course, all Doom Tower is done. Of course, Gold Tag Team should be standard. You probably working towards the upper half of Gold 2, 3, and 4 levels. Siege. Now, Siege is a big one. It's really dependent on your clan. It's dependent on your roster, but you should be in at least a tier 6 Siege clan, and you're probably working on tier 7 and tier 8. All the missions are obtained, whether you want them or not. You have the capability to get all the missions. So Ramantu, all those missions are done. Ramantu, Marius, Arbiter. And at this point, when you're in game, you're just basically working on account optimization. So everything's already kind of done in terms of progress. You're not really looking for more progress anywhere, but you're just basically looking for small changes, small optimizations on your champions, on your arena champions, on your teams, dungeon teams, Hydra teams, boss teams. So that's kind of the end game in my opinion. And then lastly, like I said, we were talking about why this topic came to my mind, and it's going to be the Grim Forest content. So where is this content going to end up? I think it's going to be definitely something for the late and end game. I'm not too sure how difficult it is right now. We don't have any gameplay footage as of this recording, but it should be proper end game content. So again, Grim Forest progress should land in the end game section as well. All right, so that's kind of like my idea for the different stages of progress in the game. I use progress as more of a benchmark as opposed to like achievements. I think a lot of people use achievements like Marius, Ramantu, Quintus, as you know, just different markers of how far you are in the game. That's not necessarily true. We have examples where people like, for example, Ash, he's a super endgame player, but it took him a really long time to get the Arbiter missions done because that just wasn't what he was interested in, because he already had an Arbiter from a shard. The other thing is, like, even on my account, I haven't even finished these artifact challenges yet because there's really no point in me doing this. And this is one of the earliest game missions that you can actually do. So actually, I haven't done this at all. So I don't think these kind of like completion areas is the best marker. So I just kind of put it as progress in different content in the game. And I think that's just like a better marker of where you are in the game. Now, for interest sake, let's talk about where my account is. Now, I always thought of my account as a proper end game account. I do everything in the game. Everything is optimized and stuff. But like I said in my previous video, I do feel like my account has kind of stagnated the last 2 years, mainly because I haven't pulled any super crazy champions that kind of push my needle, push my account in different direction, like, sorry, forward direction. So here, let's use this barometer for my own account here. So I do have all dungeons optimized and cleared. I do have the clan boss, of course, all optimized. All my Hydra keys, I look for top damage. Chimera keys, you know, Chimera keys, I'm still working on like trial teams, so trial champions, trial, you know, optimization. So I'm definitely working on that. Hard faction wars, still working on that. Centranos, full cleared it. I got Carnage, so I'm just grinding it for free rewards. And then we are at Doom Tower. That's all done. Tag team gold. You know, I'm comfortably in gold 4. Siege, that's something that I definitely need to work on. It's not something easy for my account because again the champion roster is not there. Missions cleared. I got all the missions, and we're working on account optimization and Grim Forest. So I think for the most part, you know, my account is generally pretty you know, pretty end game. I still say it's probably still end game today, but it's not as end game as you know, obviously lots of other accounts. As you can clearly see, I've only pulled 2 mythical champions, and both of them I don't really use. I use Aphodus in faction wars, and then I don't really use Gero at all. And one of them I pulled from Remnant Shards, one of them I pulled from Primal Shards. And I use a lot of the free champions a lot. Mikage, Carnage, Empress, they're very standard in all my accounts. In terms of like my overall gear, I'm gonna actually have a quick look at this. I never actually used this properly, but it's actually really cool. So you guys can do this in terms of stats. So you go to champion filter, you go to champion stats, and then this is actually really cool. I never actually looked at this, but for example, if you click crit damage, you can kind of see the highest crit damage champion on your entire account is 396. I don't know if that's high. That's probably not that high, but so we can just go through the champions I have on my team or my squad that have over 318 up to 396 crit damage. So that's kind of interesting to see. And then, for example, the big one here would be something like speed. So we can check that out as well. So going into speed, my fastest champion is 449. Now, I don't know if that's endgame levels. I think that's pretty good, but definitely not the fastest. And then if you go what my account can do, 350 minimum speed up to 450 basically. We have 8 champions here. So I think that's okay, spreading out my speed gear a little bit. Let's go 300 speed. So these are my 300 speed plus champions. So a decent amount here. It just kind of shows you how much progress I have on my account in terms of speed farming. So yeah, that's always interesting to see. I think the other big thing out here about the end game stage is basically just having the ability to do whatever you want pretty much and obtain anything in the game for the most part. At least for me, for not spending in the game, I can't obtain everything. I can't go for every single Titan event, every single 5-star, you know, soul in an event, for example. I have to kind of still pick and choose, especially on my alt account, which is free to play without content creator perks. Now, this is my main account, which does have content creator perks. It does give me a bit of flexibility in terms of what I can choose to do. But I still need to be relatively selective with what I can do. But I think for an end game account, you can basically do anything you want. You obtain all fusions, and then you have your choice of whichever, you know, special event, like special Titan event, special Heroes Path event. And I think that's a big marker of a end game account capability. Anyways, guys, thanks for sticking around for this conversation here. Like I said, we're just going to be talking about the early, mid, late game, and end game stages and how we can actually redefine them, especially with the brand new Grim Forest content coming. Obviously, I think the Grim Forest content is going to be a late game, end game piece of content. In the late game, you're probably just going to do whatever you can. And then in the end game, we're going to be trying to farm it for the new gear set Total Guard, which is actually pretty busted, but it's going to take a pretty extensive roster to do that. So of course it's going to be end game content, but I thought it would be a nice conversation to have just before we start seeing more teasers and releases of content for the Grim Forest. Anyways, guys, let me know in the comments below what you guys think. What stage of the game are you guys at? Do you guys agree or disagree with how we kind of differentiated between each stage here? And if you guys participated in that poll that we did almost 2 years ago, where are you guys now? That would be a good question as well. Anyways, guys, that's gonna be it for the video. Thanks for watching until the end. Appreciate you guys as always. If you guys enjoyed the content, make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe button, which really helps me out. Have a great day, and I'll see you guys in the next video.